action. Rules that keep things going smoothly and fairly. Rules that help us get where we're going. Help us work together, play together, and live together. Of course, in small groups, we sometimes get along without rules.
But there aren't any loud noises, just the sounds of working. We call these work sounds. Listen.
When many of us play together, rules make the game. Rules help us play fair with each other, so all can enjoy the game. Rules that apply equally to all. It's up to each one of us to know the rules and follow them.
Why do you suppose this room is so quiet? Perhaps we can learn from the teacher.
At New York's Madison Square Garden, a city college quintet faces five fast and fancy wet feet from the University of Oregon. It's the opening contest of an intersectional doubleheader, and New York draws 2 points worth of first blood.
And you know, we have found that knowing when to be quiet is a part of growing up.
16,000 fans watch the boys from the Pacific Coast as they try to stem the onslaught of City College fever. But it's all over when Silverstein shoots off the hardwood, decades the ball, and the ball game for CCNY 38-36.
Because a quiet room helps all of us learn.
How do you do it?
Well, each of us knows how to work quietly. That's very important.
But the evening sport is a long way from the locker room. In the second game, a team of Northwestern Wildcats is matched against St. John's University of Brooklyn. The lads from Illinois are off to a springboard start when Bob Coble eases the Allen into the basket to take the lead.
Do you think you could walk this quietly? Listen to this work sound.
But tribal warfare comes to the gymnasium as the St. John's Indians retaliate with 2 points. From now on, the game is touch and go, with 10 men helping to get it there. A beautiful display of teamwork, and Northwestern gets in the number column with sharp-shooting Bob Coble doing the honors.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Learn the Game, where you learn if you've got an effort. And today we're going to be talking about dribbling from a time machine. How is somebody going to be able to impact the game with their dribbling capabilities coming from one era to another? That's why there's a DeLorean on the thumbnail. First, before we get into that, Politicus Rex, how are you today, sir?
All right.
All right, so we got a post from somebody, or actually more from you, asking some questions and asking you to debunk some of these questions and his opinion on it. So the first question that he had was, can modern players with more advanced handles and dribbling, etc., adapt to previous eras? Now, before you answer that, I want to say what he said in response to answering his own question. He said, the answer to question one is pretty obvious to me. If you can walk, you can crawl. The fact that you used to walk doesn't mean you forgot how to crawl and will suddenly struggle to adapt to this scary crawly thing. Guys would go into a training camp, learn the new rules, and be fine. They don't need to develop a new skill to dribble like 60s players. They just use a subset of their existing skills. It's harder, quote unquote, to be effective with 60s dribbling, but it's not harder to perform 60s dribbling. That is the distinction I feel most have missed. A guy who has a super advanced handle can easily go back to a simplistic version of it, in the same way a man who walks and runs can still figure out how to crawl. So what are your thoughts on that, and how is he wrong?
Well, it's exactly backwards. Anything in life is harder when you put rules and restrictions on it, correct?
Yes.
I mean, my boys are 11. If we're in an open field in the middle of nowhere, we're at the Great Salt Flats or something, they can hop in a car and they can drive just fine because there's no rules to restrict them. There's no speed limit. There are no stop signs, stoplights, traffic, lanes. They can just drive and say, oh yeah, my 11-year-olds can drive fine. But when you put them with restrictions and rules, and it then becomes impossible, does it not?
It does, in respect to the things that you're allowed to do in that set of circumstances.
Yeah. So if you grow up able to handle the ball any way you want, and then you tell that person that's how they've developed their skill and their habits, and then tell them, okay, you can't do any of that anymore. You have to only do this and nothing else. It totally ropes up their abilities. They can't do the moves they've been practicing. Right?
But it's so simple just to dribble with your hand on top of the ball and not curve your hand in any way.
It is. It's very simple. It's very easy when there's no defense.
And how does the defense impact that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's easy to just dribble, try to get around somebody. And I do this when I used to do basketball camps. I used to teach this. I would prove this wrong all the time, constantly. And I would play against normally a kid, 6'3", 6'5", 6'7", something like that. I'm a little point guard, so I'd always give them every natural advantage. And we'd play one-on-one in front of everybody, and I would smoke them doing no behind the back, no between the legs, no threes, which, none of that. I would just do set shot layups.
Yeah.
And would beat the kids in the camp because they can't. Because the one thing is that I found out when I got into, I knew as a player, but you really see it as a coach, is no kids can play defense.
Yeah.
None of them. None of them know how to play proper defense. Not one. So I'd sit there and there'd be some kid, 6'5", who can dunk 18 different ways, doing great. The guy, they're going to Division I. They're doing, they got a choice of at least a couple different schools to go to. Then they play one-on-one with my little self, and I beat them. And they don't understand why. And I tell them, because it's not about your individual skill set. When you're just one-on-one, it is about understanding your advantage.
Yeah.
And I would still beat them, just dribble, 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 set shot. Because they don't know how to play position. They don't know where they should have their feet, where they should have their hands. They go for every pump fake. Just all of it. And with dribbling, all the fancy dribbling is useless. And I used to always show this in 2-on-2 drills where I'd let the kids go and they're doing the Allen Iverson crossover and all of this stuff. And they're doing all this stuff that back in the 70s would be illegal. And the guy's spending 5-7 seconds going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, doing all the fancy moves to get around his guy. And then I would get in there, take one kid's spot, and we got the other three out there, and I would just stand there, perfectly still, not giving away anything, wait for my teammate to cut, and then fire a pass for a layup. And it's like, see, all that dribbling stuff, it just tires you out.
Yeah.
8% of the game, you don't need it. And the other 2%, it's optional. It's all for show. It makes you more basketball illiterate than literate because it takes away the teamwork. You're trying to just break down the defense all on your own.
Yeah.
Man, when basketball first started, the guy with the ball could not move. There was no dribble. Didn't exist. He couldn't move. So everything was predicated on movement away from the ball. And now we've gotten to the exact opposite of that. And no one knows how to move without the ball. You always hear people talk about, oh, well, one of Steph Curry's great skills his movement without the ball. Back when I was growing up, everyone knew how to move without the ball. It was taught, like from middle school, how to move without the ball. Now they praise any professional who can actually move without the ball.
Yeah.
But it
is interesting
to play under all of the restrictions.
All right, let's get to question 2. It says, can old-timey players adapt to the modern dribbling handles required today? And of course, this guy answers himself already, before he even gives you the opportunity to answer. He says, on the second question, could old-timey players adapt to modern dribbling handles? Absolutely not. Someone just said Oscar may not dribble like Kyrie, so he'll do it like LeBron, as though what LeBron does is easy. It is not. Guys who have never had to learn more advanced dribbling skills, let alone deploy them in real games, can't just will them into existence. How many players have ever come into the league with a bad or weak handle and developed a good one? Basically, nobody. It would certainly be in the interest of teams to have all their players dribble well. But despite millions of dollars in trainers and coaches and thousands of man hours, guys almost never, ever go from poor to good in this regard. I literally cannot think of a single bad dribbler developing high-level guard handles after entering the league. It doesn't happen. That's because
there's a guy named Michael Jordan.
That's because the muscle memory and habits you develop growing up are what ingrain that ability. Once you're an adult, it's too late. Even when you look at the most incredible improvement cases in NBA history, like Kawhi, we see he got better practically every facet of the game, but his handle and dribbling still stayed about the same. End quote.
Yeah, that's because there was a guy named Tony Parker on his team. So, see, this is what fans do. Because you don't see them do it in one of the 100 games that they play in a year, if it's in Kawhi's case, because he's already in the playoffs, then you think it's a skill they don't have. I've played against guys that were bench warmers in the NBA as power forwards, and they could play point guard out on the playground and in men's leagues. They all can handle the ball. They all can. There's a famous story from Van Gundy talking about at Houston how Yao Ming and Stevie Francis used to go one-on-one, and Yao Ming could do everything Stevie Francis could do. He could handle the ball. He could go between the legs, behind the backspin. He could do all that stuff. I know George Mirasan did it one time during a timeout in a Bullets game. Ball came over towards him. He took it. He was just zip, 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 zip with the ball just for fun. George Mirasan, 7'7". They all can dribble, dude. Every guy that has ever played in the NBA can dribble better than you. Every one of them. And if you want to go back and look at old, footage of the Globetrotters from the 1940s, the stuff that's in the NBA now, they were doing for show 70 years ago. It just wasn't allowed in the NBA. But playground, Pearl Monroe did all that stuff. Bob Cousy did all that stuff. All the drills that they still teach you today, the spider drill, all the different ball handling drills that they teach you, were invented, pretty much every one of them, by Pete Maravich's father in the 1950s. You can go on YouTube right here and just put in Pete Maravich dribbling drills, and there you can see the same dribbling drills that they still teach kids today. He was saying, my father taught me this one, in Clemson, South Carolina in, 1962. This stuff isn't new. They've just loosened the rules so they're allowed to do it in NBA games. There's nothing. The ball, I looked it up. Okay. The ball was invented around 3500 BC. Is the oldest ball archaeologists have ever found. And it was in Mesopotamia. Kids had rubber balls. They had rubber balls to play with in the Olmec civilization, which is pre-Aztec in the New World, the Western Hemisphere, 2,000 and 3,000 years ago. This isn't new, guys. Kids have been bouncing balls for literally millennia. Even the air-filled leather ball was invented in the 1850s. But according to these kids, with these stories and these points of view, we just learned how to use them in the last 15 years.
Well, with the new drills, like the unicycle with the juggling tennis balls around cones.
They were doing that at circuses in 1822, dude.
But basketball players, but Kawhi Leonard, yeah, I think that's well said. And the third question is, what would the impact on effectiveness be for the above scenarios? And again, he answers this question. He says that leads to what the impact would be. Well, in the case of guys trying to bring 60s handles in today's league, they'd basically be unplayable. Big men who don't need dribbling skills, like, say, Russell, would be fine. They'd get used as rim rollers, etc. But guards like Oscar and West would be hugely impacted. Russell certainly isn't developing into some Draymond Green type player, though. That's pretty outlandish.
That is probably the most.
Yeah, Draymond is a one-of-a-kind player for a reason. That unique combination of skills, tools, almost never overlap in one player. And if you could teach guys those skills, then he wouldn't be so unique.
That is the most insane. All I can say to this person after making the comment that Draymond Green is somehow so much superior to Bill Russell is you really should try tennis, Sparky, because basketball ain't for you because you do not understand the game at all. For one thing, Bill Russell has the third highest assist average for any center ever. He famously has a college highlight where he grabs a rebound, goes coast to coast, jumps from just inside the free throw line, hurdles a player a la Vince Carter, and finger rolls the ball into the basket. And he did that in 1955. Okay? 1955. 70 years ago. Draymond Green can't do that playing high school kids. Okay?
Yeah. I do find the Bill Russell disrespect by some people to be rather ridiculous. And it's
because they don't understand the game.
Yeah.
If you understand how the game's played, you understand Bill Russell's. For one thing, Bill Russell was the most unique player ever. No one has ever been able to copy. They talk about people not copying Kareem Skyhook. That's just one move. Bill Russell's entire style of play, skill set, and persona have never been copied. He is the most unique player in basketball history.
All right. So for these three questions that you got on your post, what grade would you, and self answers, the test that he gave himself and answered, what would you give him as a grade?
Oh, it's an F. He completely does not understand. But to his credit, all right, I'm not here just to bash. This was this one person who, this is a brand new account, and these are the only comments he made, and there's been no reply. So he's someone else that came in just to make these comments under someone else's name. you know. But my response after all this is I said to him, wow, okay, that's really pretty much wrong, but whatever. You know, it's just a total lack of understanding is what it is. It's not like the kid can't be intelligent. He just doesn't understand that human evolution does not happen over decades. You know, if you teach an athlete from the ancient Olympics 2,300 years ago, if you take the winner of that Olympics and bring them into today and give them modern training and modern nutrition and education, they're still going to be Olympic level because the human potential is still the same.
Yeah.
The genetic have not changed.
He has some more comments he put on here, and I just want to get your thoughts on them. He said, on the other side of the coin, what would the impact be for modern players going back in time? Well, it would obviously reduce their effectiveness to some degree, except in the case of bigs. But for the most part, it wouldn't matter. It would take away Curry's crossover and penetration game a little, but guys like him and KD would be hitting shots at such a high volume from distance that guys wouldn't know how to respond to it.
Yeah,
Sure, they
you
wouldn't.
wouldn't know how to respond to them. You cover them. You stand in front of them. You put your hands up. It's called defense. Okay, that's how you respond to them.
And then he says, sure, they wouldn't be worth 3 points, which sucks, but they'd be nailing the shots at such a high degree above league efficiency that they'd still be breaking the league.
Which is funny because even at 3-pointers, Steph Curry has a lower 3-point shooting percentage than his coach.
Yeah.
So this efficiency thing, but it's just maddening because they say these things without even attempting to do any type of research, any type of understanding. When you talk about athletics and athleticism, the Olympic record for the long jump, you talk about how today these guys can jump from the free throw line and dunk. Okay, that's a long jump, right? The Olympic record for the long jump was set in 1968, like when I was born. Lyndon Johnson was president. Okay? The triple jump, which is another long jump event, the world record was set in 1995, 30 years ago, by a white guy, a short white guy, okay? They're not better athletes now. What it is when Russell was a rookie, there were 80 jobs in the NBA. You had 8 10-man teams. Now you have 500 NBA players. Instead of 80, you have 500. So you see all these athletes everywhere. Yeah, because there's 420 more jobs. There's 8 times as many players. Or is it 6 times? 6 times as many players. So you see 6 times as many great athletes.
Yeah. There is one more comment that this guy has. Might be the best one. He says, so the translation works much better for new players going back than old players moving forward. But the other side of this to remember is that we're not comparing like for like. The 60s was a terrible league, which with a terrible product. We shouldn't care as much about the backwards compatibility because the comparison should mostly be about how you would do in the best league with the best quality and strongest tactics / players. I'm not really interested in which players would be best if they played 3-on-3 using miniature rims and mini balls either, because it's almost a different sport. I'm ranking guys at how good they were at pro basketball. The 60s was barely a professional league. It's worthwhile considering backwards compatibility, but I'd be weighting the modern era much higher. Also, in the league's 75-ish years of existence. The majority of it had dribbling that was closer to today's standards than the 60s. The majority of it had a three-point line, too.
Okay. The 60s had a three-point line in the ABA. Three-point line existed in the 60s. There was another pro league that was a smaller league that was in the early 60s that invented, so to speak, the three-point line at the pro level. They had three-point lines in high schools in the Midwest in the 1930s. Okay? The first shot ever made in the sport of basketball, the first ever game ever held by Dr. James Naismith in his phys ed class, ended in a 1-0 score. The only shot made was a 25-footer, which today would be a three-pointer. So the first basketball shot ever made was from three-point distance. So all of this is just malarkey. It's just BS. And it's just not understanding history of the sport you claim to love and follow. That is the definition of a casual.
Aircraft carrier asks, what's backwards compatibility? What does that mean? I think he's thinking of it like a video game. You don't have the system to run a video game of the modern video games, like putting a PS5 game in a PS1.
He thinks he thinks like basketball from the 60s is outdated and irrelevant. When it's the actual game, if you actually sit there and watch kids, because it's a game, people, okay? Fans only think of NBA and like 7-foot millionaires running around. It's a game. It's for kids. Every single player that's in the NBA started playing when he was a kid. Okay? It's a game. And if you go out and watch kids play, it looks more like 1960s basketball than it does 2026 NBA. That's a fact anywhere in the world.
Yeah. Absolutely. So what is the most ridiculous thing that this guy was talking about, or just in the same context of discussion that you've heard around? Is this the worst that you've heard from somebody?
The worst that has put this much effort into it. He obviously put a lot of thought into what he was going to type, but he didn't put a lot of research into the thoughts behind what he was going to type.
Yeah.
So to put this much effort into a post and this much thought and articulate it, which is very well articulated, and everything portioned off, very specific questions and responses. But to still be so wrong, it is not an intelligence issue, cannot be. It is an education issue, a motivation issue. If you love something, you research it, you find out about it, you learn about it, you learn the progression. That, like I said, the biggest thing for me, other than seeing an NBA game, my first NBA game when I was like 5, and then being able to just be a fan and have total access to every bit of literature about the sport that I wanted. The next biggest thing as far as my development of understanding the game was in high school, when every Thursday we would play Naismith ball. Where for a half hour every Thursday at the beginning of practice, well, sometimes it was at the end of practice, we would play a game of basketball by the original basketball rules of James Naismith. And then you understand where the progression of the rules comes from and why. And it's basketball, by its original rules, is a really hard sport to play. It's hard because it is literally, your thinking is the exact opposite. Today, and even when I was growing up in the 70s, the first thing you do when you get the ball is you want to dribble. You want to attack the basket. You want to go up court. Well, in original basketball, you can't. That's taken away. The dribble did not exist. You can't move. And it's not you can't move your pivot foot. You can't move either foot. However your feet are when you receive the ball, that's how you have to stand. You can't move either foot. And all you can do is either put up a shot from there or pass. But the defense is pretty much manhandling your teammates. So it's harder for them to move. So before the dribble was invented, the pick was invented. The screen was invented. Right? The diagonal cut was invented. All of these things were invented before the dribble even existed. Until you learn how to do those skills, being able to dribble better than anyone in the world doesn't really help your team.
Yeah.
Because every dribble, every time you put your hand on the ball, it's one time less that your teammates are putting a hand on the ball. And to quote Bill Russell, everyone can score. Everyone knows what to do with the ball when the ball's in their hand. What do you do when the ball is not in your hand? That's what determines the winner.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this guy wrote probably about a 3-page comment, so it was interesting. But yeah, Rex, what more do you have to say about Time Machine Basketball? I'm gonna be away from my mic for a minute, but what more do you have to say about the idea of Time Machine Basketball and its relevance to comparing players?
Well, the biggest problem, the overwhelming problem with quote unquote Time Machine Basketball is virtually every person I've ever spoke to about it always thinks of it. They don't understand chronology. Like I once made the comment, which is a factual comment, and it wasn't for or against anyone. It was just something I noticed with the rules, is that the only two players to average over 30 points a game for their career are Wilt and Jordan. But there was a significant rules change that happened 6 years after Wilt retired, and essentially 4 years before Jordan came in the league, 5 years, is the three-point shot came into effect. Jordan made 581 three-pointers in his career. If you take out those 581 extra points, he only averaged 29.5 points a game. So he only averaged 30 points a game because of the three-pointer. Now, obviously, if the three-pointer didn't exist, it completely changes everything, because then it also changes his shot selection. So you really can't tell anything. All we know is what actually happened. But I just made the comment that, if you take away those 581 extra points of Jordan, then Wilt is still the highest in points per game if they hadn't changed the rule. And I had over 100 people come at me in that comment section saying, well, that's not true, because that it wouldn't have changed anything because Wilt never shot three-pointers. That's irrelevant. The point is he couldn't. And the rules were changed and Jordan could. They changed the rule. That's the significant part of the story. And the changing of that rule then made their comparison uneven. Kind of had a famous thing a couple years ago talking about this exact same issue, where I said it's not comparing apples to oranges, it's comparing apples to typewriters. You literally cannot compare. And that's why I always say there's no such thing as an individual GOAT in a team sport with multiple positions, multiple playing styles, and multiple eras with multiple rules changes. Because once you make a significant rules change, the game changes, the game itself changes. There is no comparison to be made. You constantly hear fans talk about, well, the 90s and 2000s was the slowest era of basketball. No, it wasn't. There was an era before there was even a shot clock, when there was a game that finished 19-18. All right? Pre-shot clock was the slowest era. And there's not even a debate there. It's without a doubt it was. But fans just don't know about it because they don't bother researching the history of the game they claim to love. And that's the biggest problem with time machine basketball is you got to put your effort. And here's the thing. This is why I hate the whole Jordan versus LeBron debate is you spend 80% of the basketball posts on YouTube are arguing those two players. Stop it. Forget about that debate. What about the other 5,000 NBA players? Let's learn about all of them. Let's speak their name. Let's learn what they did. Let's learn what their teams did. And then you understand the sport better. And that's not even considering also college from 40 years ago, 70 years ago, and all that type of thing. You know, if you truly love basketball, learn the history of basketball and learn the truth about it. And it makes you understand the game better. Next time you go out and play on the court, you'll win more because you'll understand the game better. And that's the thing that I very rarely ever see anyone even mention. They take today's game, that's not really the word I want to use, and they compare it to how players back in the past eras played and act like it's an even up thing. And it's not. It's like I hear people say, you know, well, LeBron James couldn't play back in the 80s. Of course he could. Of course he could. He's a 4-time MVP, 4-time champion. Of course he could. He's the all-time leading scorer, like 4th all-time leader in assists. Of course he could play. And of course he'd be successful. And of course he'd be an all-star. And of course he would win championship. Of course he would. It's ridiculous to say, oh, well, if he was born 30 years earlier, this 6'9", 250-pound phenomenal athlete would not even be able to play. That's stupid. For one thing, he's almost played for 30 years, it feels like. He's in his 23rd season. Saying he couldn't play in the 80s. I mean, he was playing against NBA players in the late 90s when he was still in high school. You know, of course he could play. I mean, you got guys like, they want to talk about the 60s. Okay, well, in the 60s, when Bill Russell was winning NBA championships, when Wilt was leading the league in assists as a center, there was a guy in college named Lou Alcindor that if you do the reading, people were saying this guy is going to be better than either one. All right, that's Kareem. Kareem was in college winning College Player of the Year the same time Bill Russell was winning his championships in the NBA. And Kareem was still winning championships in the late 80s.
Yeah.
Okay? And then it's just mind-boggling how these people think. And remember, right after Kareem retires, it's only like 2 years later, 2 years, just 700 days, that Shaquille O'Neal is at Cole High School in San Antonio and then going to LSU. And the Shaq is on the scene. Kareem had just retired. And Kareem was playing college when Bill Russell was ruling the game. But they act like these eras are so different and these guys wouldn't be able to play in this time and that time. It's just the most ridiculous thing ever.
Yeah.
Like if guys, you want to sit here and say, oh, well, guys' handles are so great today, and guys in the 50s and 60s, they wouldn't be able to play today. Two points. Okay. So if guys were that uncoordinated 70 years ago, how did humans exist 7,000 years ago? 1,000 years ago? How did we hunt for food? How did we build houses? How are we able to build boats that sailed across the ocean like the Vikings if you don't even think these guys could dribble with their hand on the side of the ball? How were the pyramids built? How was all this stuff done? If you think that type of dexterity progression has happened in half of a century, then how bad were we? Why were shoelaces invented during the Greek times? You know, they wouldn't have been able to tie them, according to these guys. And then, yeah.
Hold on. I'll play this in the background while you're still talking, but I wanted to show you some basketball. Hold on one second. It's people playing basketball in the 1950s. Just a comparison with people of today. Hopefully this doesn't get a copyright issue, but this is people from 7,000 years ago, starting civilizations.
You might think that this orangutan is washing socks as some kind of circus trick for which she's been specially trained, but not so. She is doing this entirely on her own initiative. She's seen others doing it and she's copying. And that ability to imitate as well as to use tools is something which started among monkeys but has been brought to a much greater level among the apes. And those two talents were ultimately to lead to the transformation of the world.
Pretty much explains the modern NBA right there.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah, but you know that's the type of stuff that just cracks me up.
Who've been rescued from captivity.
Oh, here it is. This is what I wanted to
because they've lived partly in our world as well as theirs. They can give us an insight into what we have in common. This old lady loves DIY.
Yeah.
So does her son, who was born in the wild. Even her infant is interested.
You see, his handles when he gets older are going to be insane.
Very striking when you sit as close to an orangutan as this to see how similar they are.
I would never get that close to an orangutan with a sharp object.
But
Yeah.
how human her hand is. The skill with which she picks things up.
Anyway, people are ridiculous with saying that people couldn't play basketball, and they act, you know, like as you've said 1 million times, as if they don't have the capabilities, as you said, people have evolved in 40 years. It's just one generation.
Yeah. And here's the final point. How many times when you see like the Allen Iverson crossover or Kyrie's ball handling, and you ask these fans, could John Stockton do that?
And then They say no.
A lot of them would say no because he didn't do that, but it doesn't mean he couldn't do that. John Stockton had a basketball video where he at a camp where he's teaching ball handling drills, and he can do all of that stuff.
Yeah.
He can whip it around, and he can do all of it. For being a 6'1" guy, he has really huge hands, very strong hands, and he can just do all of it. He can just pick the ball up, palm it, just like Jordan did, everything. He's the all-time leader in assists and steals. But when Chris Paul retired, there was a lot of polls on YouTube where it said which one is greater, better, and all that. And like there was one that had like Jason Kidd, Chris Paul, I think Gary Payton, and John Stockton. And like John Stockton was like last in the polling. It's like John Stockton was far superior to any of them.
Yeah.
Like far superior. And he played the exact same timeline as Michael Jordan. He came in the same year and they retired for the last time the same year. And it's just wild, that people just, because John Stockton didn't play that way, they think he couldn't. He's the all-time leader in 2 major statistical categories. And all the guys that you think are so much better aren't even near him. And it's just mind-boggling that this is what fans think. They literally do not understand the game of basketball.
Yeah. I think more people are interested in just slandering or attacking people that they don't like in basketball versus actually talking about it.
Yeah, it's fandom. It's just fandom. That's why I have on my tag thing, my tagline and all that is, I'm not a fan. I don't care who's the all-time leading scorer or who has the most MVPs or who has the most. I don't care. Doesn't change my life any. Yeah. I don't root for any team or any player. I love the game, all facets of the game. I thought the coolest thing I saw this week was the WNBA, or I guess it wasn't WNBA, it's the other league, Rivals League, had a one-on-one tournament where the pro women were going one-on-one against each other. That was very telling. That was really fun to watch.
I did see some clips of that. I was happy to see that. And when I see things like that, I'd love to see the NBA do things. And I know they've done, not particularly the NBA, maybe they have, but old NBA players playing one-on-one otherwise.
Yeah, they won't do that now.
Yeah.
Because
love to see it, though.
Yeah, they won't do it now because of how much money they make. If they get embarrassed, they can actually lose millions of dollars in the long term.
Yeah.
Through their image. And this isn't new. I mean, Jordan refused to play Magic in a one-on-one pay-per-view game that was scheduled. And then he was advised against it for business reasons. Jordan wasn't afraid to play Magic. It was, if you lose, your brand will take a big hit. And in the long run, will cost you a whole lot of money.
Yeah.
And that's the, it's there's too much money involved with the NBA that it won't have. And that's Rich Paul just came out talking about why did LeBron never do the NBA dunk contest? And he said, because if he lost, they would just use it as a reason to bash him. And if he won, everyone would just say it was rigged. Yeah. It couldn't help his brand, his image any. So he didn't do it. And that's the problem.
Yeah, I think if he did it early on, I mean, I think.
Well, he did the high school dunk contest and won it easily.
Yeah.
Then he never did another one.
Yeah.
But just to put it out there, only one NBA player has ever jumped from the free throw line and dunked it in an NBA game. And it's LeBron, and he's done it twice, 10 years apart.
Yeah.
You can YouTube that. Vince Carter, Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, any of the other, Dominique Wilkins, any of the others you want to name, none of them jumped from the free throw line and dunked it in an NBA game. Only LeBron has, and he did it twice. Once in his 20s and once in his 30s. Or he might have been right at 30. But you get my point.
Absolutely. All right, Rex, I think it's time to shut this thing down. Do you have any last words for the people?
Learn the game. People don't understand the game. When people argue about, this player, that player, and they never understand situation and circumstance. They don't understand roles. They don't understand, any of this type of stuff. They don't understand the rules, the strategies of the day. Everyone thinks that the players determine everything. They totally just disavow coaching. And coaching doesn't exist. And it's just crazy. Just the lack of understanding of the game. It's like I used to teach kids just rudimentary chess. Right?
Yeah.
And now, if you're in chess, you're the coach. The pieces are the players. You have a queen. Now, who's the most important piece on the chessboard? It's the king.
Okay.
Because you lose your king, that's when the game ends. But is the king the most talented piece?
No.
No, the queen is.
Yeah.
But can the queen do everything?
Nope.
No. The queen cannot mimic the move of a knight.
Yep.
Only a knight can. A knight has a very specific skill set in chess that even the most powerful piece cannot copy.
Yep.
Okay? Just like any team sport. You may have a Michael Jordan on your team. You may have a Kareem. You may have a Magic. You may have a Bird. You have all that. But every time up and down the court, people follow the ball. They don't look at the rest of the game. And if you look at all the people sitting down, that's your bench players. Okay? That's basically your pawns. Right? They're the interchangeable ones. They're half of the roster. And a pawn can win a game for you, but rarely, because they have limited skill sets. But they can win games for you. Right? Like John Paxson, Steve Kerr. Okay? You have players like Rodman. Jordan, you can argue, is the greatest player of all time. He could not do what Rodman did. What Rodman gave them in 96, Jordan could not do. Pippen could not do. Rodman was essentially a knight.
Yeah.
He moved what he did on the chessboard. No other piece could replicate. Yeah. Same with Bill Russell. What they brought to the game could not be replicated, and thus made it much more valuable.
Yeah.
And that's how I would teach kids to start understanding the game of basketball. Each team only has one go-to player. When it comes down to a final shot, one shot, only one guy can take it. Right? And that's your quote-unquote go-to guy. Okay, So if there's 30 teams in the NBA, there are 30 go-to guys.
Yeah.
When it comes down, Game 7, NBA championship, down by 1, only one guy is going to take that shot on your roster. That means there's 30 guys. The other 470 guys in the league are role players, and they're millionaires. So when you're learning the game, stop trying to be the Michael Jordan, the LeBron James. Find out what you have a natural skill at, work on it, and be that guy that can do that skill the best you can. You'll always have a spot on a team. Because in the end, when you get to the highest level, there's only 30 go-to players.
Yeah. Aram Hamparian said no. I don't know about what, but anyway.
Got to elaborate.
Yeah. But yeah, Rex, thanks for coming. Appreciate your time, your insight on time machine basketball when it comes to dribbling, and some other interesting quotes from the YouTube channel, likely using a pseudonym. So anyway, appreciate your time. Everyone learn the game, and learn if you got an F for effort. Goodbye.